Oh, if only all of that stuff that he said were true. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am so honored to be here. I am floored by that introduction. I appreciate it. I want to talk to you a little bit about another way to go against socialism. I think what the Heartland Institute is doing is phenomenal work. When I went to CPAC, I watched Justin, and I watched him, and I watched the people in the room that were listening. He is brilliant. The research that he has done, it's why, and I don't think anybody knows this yet, it's why I asked him to co-author my next book, Arguing Against Socialists. And that is going to come out right around the time of Super Tuesday. And it's going to be fun and right directly between the eyes, because we are losing our country, but we're losing our country not just because we haven't made the argument against socialism. I mean, when I was growing up, I remember I was scared out of my mind by the Soviets because I thought we were all going to be vaporized. And we were very clear on good and evil. But we kind of, and I say kind of, knew who we were. So tonight, instead of talking to you about socialism, I would like to talk to you about us. I'd like to remind you who we are, because this is the biggest problem in the country right now. The biggest problem in the country is we have absolutely no idea anymore who we are. And I want to share some stories with you. Because what we're told now is that we're a country that was started by a bunch of racists. I want you to know, I have more. I wanted to start with Columbus and the Pilgrims and try to get to about 1970. I might get to 1930. And I'm cutting out Columbus and the Pilgrims. I just want to start with the founding of our nation. We are told that these were greedy men. We are told that how could Thomas Jefferson write the words, all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? How could that man write those words? We know he didn't mean it because he owned slaves. Well, I brought with me an 1820 engraving of the first draft of the Declaration of Independence. This is in his handwriting. And you will see, if you can just come all in, you can see there are corrections. And over here on the side, it's almost like a Google Doc. I hate those guys. It's almost like a Google Doc. It says who changed it and why. So this one here says changed by Dr. Franklin. This is Mr. Adams. And they changed it all the way along. Now, when you get to the usurpations part, because the Declaration of Independence is the greatest document. Tomorrow on a podcast, I'm talking to a woman who was raised in England by a Muslim mother and father who were not extremists, but they were still living, a very different life, separate from the culture. And then they moved to another side of London where she became an extremist. And she married a guy whose father was a U.S. general. In Texas, she moved to Texas to hook up with this guy, an American, who had become an Islamic extremist, really pretty much just to spite his dad. They get married. She's full burqa. He goes to prison for 18 months. And in those 18 months, this is the first time she had ever been left alone. She could do what she wanted in her own house. And so she started reading. And one of the first things she read was the Declaration of Independence. And her eyes opened up. She told me just the other day, I had never heard anything like that before. That was a completely foreign concept. As soon as I read it, I knew it was true, but I had never heard anyone say those words. Let me go back to Thomas Jefferson. If you notice on the... Surprised they weren't on my face. By the way, let me just get this out. I know what everybody is thinking. My gosh, he looks like Colonel Sanders, who's just been stung by bees. I know. Jeez. All right. So Thomas Jefferson is writing this. And the usurpation part, the first part of the Declaration of Independence, is a mission statement. It says, look, guys, we're going to have to break up. It's the world's greatest breakup letter. We're going to have to break up, and this time it's not me, it's you. And so we have to break up, and let me tell you why. But first, I have to tell you, you don't know who I am. We've been living together all these years, and you don't know who I am. This is who I am. I believe that men should be free. I believe that the individual is what counts, and I am equal to you, the king. Wow. Then he says, and we've tried to talk to you about this. You don't pick up your underwear. You don't pick up your socks. I'm constantly having to wash all of the dishes. You're a bad king. It's the usurpations. Most people just skip over that. You shouldn't, because some of them are beginning to look very, very familiar. But in the first draft, if you look at the first draft, you could find this online. You will find a section of the usurpations. Now I'm trying to find it, and now I can't see. Here it is, right here. This is at the very end. And if you look at it, his writing changes, and he capitalizes. Now, in the draft that we all know, there's only the capitalization of the United States of America. That's the only thing that's capitalized. In this, there's two additional words that are capitalized, and that they're end of the usurpations. The word men and the word Christian. And I want to share with you what he says. He's talking about the king, and he gets to the last one, and he says, finally, this king has waged a cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most valued rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant land, a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere to incur miserable death in their transportation. This warfare, the opprobrium of infidel powers, is the warfare, capitalized, of the Christian king. He's mocking the king. How dare you say you're a Christian and you are doing this to men? You're violating God's most important right. How dare you call yourself a Christian? Then he says, this Christian king of Great Britain determines to keep an open market where, capitalized, men are sold on the open market. He's not only recognizing that they are men, he's capitalizing it because the king didn't think they were men. He's taking a bold stand declaring this. Now, why isn't this in here? Because he goes on. It's another paragraph. Talks about how we have tried to stop it over and over, and he blocks us every single time. He's now, he says in this document, he's now bribing these people. He has taken them from their homes. He has enslaved them. Now that we are trying to set them free, have you heard that in school? Now that we're setting them free, he is going and saying, I will pay you to go kill these people. He's committing a sin again. Now, why isn't that in the Declaration of Independence? Because if you read the Declaration of Independence, it says the Unanimous Declaration. Why was it unanimous? Because at the very beginning, before a word was written, John Hancock stood up and said, we have to have one vote. We're going to declare our independence. As everybody agreed, they all agreed. Thomas, you're going to write it. And here's the thing. We have to take a vote right now. History will tell us that if we have any space between us, if we disagree on one thing, the king will send his people in and he will weasel his way in and he will split us apart. Does everything need to be unanimous in this declaration? All of them agreed. 2 states said no. 11 said yes. 2 said no. Thomas Jefferson tried to free his slaves all the way up to his death. George Washington freed his, but it was legal to only free them on death. Thomas Jefferson was trying to free his. Soon as George Washington found out that he had freed his slaves, they changed the law again. They said, well, you can't do that anymore. If you're in debt, you can't do that because this is property. Thomas Jefferson was a man who liked his wine. Thomas Jefferson was in debt. He couldn't free his slaves. He couldn't. He tried over and over again. So who were our founders? Our founders were men who thought thoughts that no one had thought before. No one had the balls to say these things, let alone the intellect to think them and write them down. And they are so shocking that they are still today being read by people around the world for the first time, and they say, I know that's true, but I can't believe somebody wrote that down. Who were our founders? Our founders were people who deeply believed. They didn't get along all the time. They didn't agree on everything. But they were willing to sacrifice their lives, their fortunes, for something bigger. For a dream that all of them thought would be done by 1820. None of them believed that this would last. And George Washington, I have tried in history to find another man. Now you'll read about George Washington. They'll say, well, we don't really think he was like that. Really? You're going to dismiss everyone who worked with him, knew him, and wrote about him while he was alive and shortly after his death. Yes, well, we know better now. What, are you using a Ouija board? How do you know? I've tried to find another man. There's no other man that I've ever found except Jesus, like George Washington. Do you know what? Do you know when he ran, one of the people that was running against him the second time, he didn't want to run again. He didn't want that job. Do you know what the biggest complaint was? The scandal on George Washington? It actually came from his mother. His mother was like, you don't want him. This is true. He spends way too much money on ice cream. That's the scandal. Okay? I love that guy. This is a guy when he was 12 years old did everything he could to figure out what a man is, what a good man is. By the time he's 12, he's writing his book on civility. He's just writing for himself. What are the things that I should do if I want to be a good man? You read it today. He wrote it before he was a teenager, before he could get into a PG-13 movie. He's working on this. For his birthday, and I think this is so appropriate, for his 13th birthday, he was given a compass because he was a surveyor. And he had this compass with him his whole life. It's the only compass he ever owned. And he was on the battlefield, he had that compass, thinking, pondering, worrying. This is the compass that George Washington had. What's amazing about this, Bob, come up here for a second. What's amazing about this is if you hold it a certain way, and I found this when I was at Fox. I had a day where I had the goods on someone, and I could have taken them down so easily, and it would have felt oh so good. But it was wrong. It was personal. It was personal. And I got up in that morning and I wanted to do it, and everybody on my staff was saying, do it. And I took this out of my safe and I put it in my pocket in my suit. And if you would watch the episode where I wanted so desperately to reveal, I had my hand in my pocket almost the whole episode. And I was, stay true, be a man of honor. And because I had it in my pocket the whole time, Bob, if you will hold it just like this and rub your thumb right there. Do you feel that? That's a man, I believe. That's from a lifetime of holding that compass and rubbing. There is an indentation right where your thumb is. Is that remarkable? Just say yes, Bob, please. Yes, thank you. I mean, I'll give you $5. Just say yes. Play along with me here. He's like, well, I'm not really sure if it's that remarkable. I mean, it's not like you have Abraham Lincoln's bloodied coat or anything. Oh, yes, I do, Bob. I want to tell you and spend the time, and please, I've asked my wife just a time because you said earlier you could be you're a politician and so you could speak forever. I could be a dictator because I could speak for hours. Like Castro. I want to tell you who we were, who we are still today if we choose to be. Abraham Lincoln, thank you for that pathetic, maybe we could be that. I think so, maybe. Abraham Lincoln is one of my favorite presidents, and we were just having a conversation at the table, a really great conversation about, was he a good guy, was he a bad guy? And there's case to be made on both sides. I don't think really a bad guy, but there's a case to be made. But I have read so much about Abraham Lincoln, and the guy changed in office because he kept losing. And when you're losing and people are dying and everybody wants to kill you, it kind of humbles you. And he was driven to his knees. What do you want? It's not about the Union, Abe. It's about humans. It's about slavery. He was trying to save the Union. Halfway through, after getting his head kicked in, we lose, I think, every battle to the halfway point. He's humbled, and he's like, what do you want? Free men. Free men. And if the Lord requires that all of the treasure, everything that we have done is put up into one pile, and he demands that every piece of that is gone and is exchanged for every drop of blood drawn by the lash, so be it. This is right. He asks the country for a day of prayer, fast, and humiliation. This goes back to Columbus and our pilgrims and George Washington. We are a covenant nation. We are a covenant nation. He renews the covenant and asks the people, beg for forgiveness. We win every battle, I think except for one, after that. Things change. When you don't make it about winning, when you don't make it about me, when you make it about principles that are universal. But nobody's talking about the principles because they can't get past the people. Well, let me tell you about Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln knew he was going to die. He knew it. He had nightmares about it. He knew it. This is such a weird time. When he first is elected, he goes to Baltimore. He's on his way to Washington. They're already trying to kill him. There's one guy, Colonel Charles Pomeroy Stone, who actually saves his life, decides, we're going to smuggle you out of Baltimore. We're going to put you on a train. I think they went to Pittsburgh and then to Washington. He was supposed to stay in Baltimore and get on the train the next day. Well, he was going to be killed. Charles Pomeroy Stone, he was a colonel. He's the first guy that we had as a Secret Service kind of detail, and he went and escorted the president. They brought him into, I think it was a theater, and he comes in with his big stovepipe hat, and he's looking like Abraham Lincoln, and everybody knows who he is. And so what they do is they say, Mr. Lincoln, they bring him around a corner in the back, and they say, hunch over. They put a shawl over him, and they're like, okay, we're going to sneak out. Except, please take the hat off. It's kind of a giveaway. So he takes the hat off, and he's covered in this shawl, and he gets into a carriage, and they're going down the street, and it's the first time he hears people talking about him and realizes, oh my gosh, they hate my guts. He's finally killed in the theater. What most people don't know is what a horrible, horrible way they treated him. And I don't mean just because of the medicine of the day. The doctor didn't know what to do. He had a hole in his head, and it kept clogging. And so, believe it or not, the doctor kept sticking his finger in that hole, digging around, trying to find the bullet, and then just unclogging it. As he was laying in the box, one of the women who was in the play, she just wanted to be a star. Because John Wilkes Booth, he was like the Leonardo DiCaprio of our day, of that time. He was a big, big star. So his co-star on some of the roles, this woman, very, very famous, well, she just, oh my, I hear the president is ailing, and it gives me a case of the vapors. Please, may I just go up and hold the president? They said yes. And she's like, but first, I have to change my clothes. So she goes to her dressing room and she puts on a brand new all-white dress. I am ready to comfort the president. She goes up, may I hold his head in my lap? And he bleeds all over this dress. She takes that dress on the road to talk about how she was the Florence Nightingale. And the best part of this story is, I don't remember her name. This is the lapel. If you go to Ford's Theater, you will see what he was wearing that night. This is the lapel right here, this part. Because as he was laying on the floor, somebody went in and cut this off of the jacket. Abraham Lincoln. The guy who saved his life, Charles Pomeroy Stone, he's a remarkable man. He was actually thrown into jail without a trial. He's thrown into prison. He was there for about 8 months because he didn't think that we should kick the crap out of the South. He thought, yes, we should beat them, but we don't treat them like animals. He didn't have a friend anywhere. He was actually blamed for a massive loss that he wasn't even part of. He wasn't even there. And they didn't have a case against him, so he was tried in Congress, except they didn't try him. They just said, yeah, put him in prison, we'll get to it. Abraham Lincoln finds out about it. 6 months into it, he says, do you have Stone in prison? Where's the trial? You've got to give him a trial. Release him or give him a trial. We're going to give him a trial. 2 months later, still haven't. Lincoln said, get him out of prison. But he had been so discredited that no one would hire him. No one wanted to be around him. So he left the United States of America and he went to serve other countries. He ends up in Egypt serving the French. Few years pass, he comes back to America and he's like, has everybody forgotten who I was, or can you still find me on Wikipedia? Nobody wants to work with him still, they still remember. Then one day, there's a knock at his door. He answers, and it's 2 soldiers. You Colonel Pomeroy Stone? Yes. We need your help. Excuse me? Were you in Egypt? Yes. And you worked with the French? Yes. So you can speak and read French? Yes. We got this birthday present. And they left it in the park in giant boxes. And we got a hand with a torch in it, and we got a head over here, and all of the instructions are in French. We don't know how to put it together. Will you help us? He took the job. This is the purchase order for the stones for the base of the Statue of Liberty, signed by a man who realized it's not the people, it's the idea of America. And even if the people treated me poorly, I believe in the idea. Because that's what we are. We're an idea. We're not a country. Our unum is all men are created equal. You can come from anywhere. If you believe that, that's what brings us together. We have all kinds of differences. Let's celebrate our unum. Let's celebrate what actually matters. Oh, it's like Sophie's Choice. Who gets on the train? I've got 10 minutes left. I'm going to go fast. So at the time, we're doing the Statue of Liberty, and it's not us, that's France. And France isn't giving us a gift. Who gives that gift? I mean, it's good because nobody in the family is going to say, are you sure they don't have one of these already? They didn't care. This whole thing was a guy who wanted to sell a statue, okay? He wanted to sell a statue. And then, because Marx had started the Spring of Nations, does that sound familiar? The Arab Spring, that's Marx, the Spring of Nations. That's what is kicked off in Europe in the 1850s, about the time we're fighting the Civil War. In fact, if I just might say, do you know where the original George Washington crossing the Delaware painting is? The original. Does anybody know where it is? Where? Germany. Was in Germany, but the Allies bombed it in World War II and it burned up. What? How did that painting get to Europe? How did it get to Germany? How was it in a museum in Nazi Germany? Because it was painted by a German, not for us, for them. Because during the Spring of Nations in 1850, this painter had spent time in America. And he realized, guys, you're going the wrong way. You're going to this socialism thing. That's not it. You want everybody in the boat? Look to America. If you look at that painting, look at it tonight and read about it. There's a woman. There's an African American. There's a Native American. There's a frontiersman. There is a businessman. There are 2 presidents in the boat. Everyone is in the boat. They have an idea that will draw everyone together. And look what they can create. That is why that painting exists. It wasn't for us. And neither was the Statue of Liberty. That's why they just dumped it into our park like, yeah, happy birthday, here it is, put it together. That thing was given to us because they went around in the uprising, the communist uprisings in France, and they needed a way. It was like you. You all sat around and went, how can we tell? How can we beat these socialists? I know, we can tell the story of America. Their birthday, let's build a Statue of Liberty. And we can go to all of the biggest people and we can ask them for a donation and we can get in because we're not talking about socialism. We're just talking about America. They were telling our story to convince their people. This is in the days before we nation build. They wanted it because we weren't saying, you know what, look how cool we are. That's why the Statue of Liberty has a broken chain on her foot. They broke the chains of slavery. She holds the tablets, the law of Moses and the law of man. Imprisoned lightning. That's what the torch is. In her torch, imprisoned lightning. Does anybody know what imprisoned lightning is? It was the idea that we gave the world the light bulb. In her torch is imprisoned lightning. In other words, this is a place of great discovery. This is a place that anybody can do anything, and miracles happen. And we listen to Emma Lazarus' poem, The Great Colossus, and it bothers me so much when people say, give me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses. It's not a hospital. We are not a hospital. We are an idea. Not like save it for the end or I'm never going to get any closer. Emma Lazarus writes, not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. That is the Colossus of Rhodes. In Rhodes, they had a man standing there in a skirt and the boats went underneath. If it was like Scotland, God help you looking up. But he was standing there and he had a sword and a flame. And it was a warning. You come into our harbor. Watch it. We control it. It was a warning. So she writes, not like the brazen giant of Greek fame with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here, at our sunset sea-washed gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beaconed hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor, the twin cities frame. Keep your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me, your poor, your tired, your huddled masses that yearn to be free. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed, send them to me. Because I hold my lamp beside the golden door. She is not saying, oh, come to me, I want a hug. She's not saying that. She's saying you have so many rules and regulations and you're born up and you can be this, or you're a duke, or you're an earl, or you can't do this because you don't have the right lineage. All the people that you say are worthless, I say send them here, because I'm going to be watching you, not them. I'm going to be watching you. Keep your hands off those people. You watch what those people can do. That is the story of the Statue of Liberty. That is worth celebrating. Could I have 10 more minutes? Go. So the world's going in a different direction. And it starts with Charles Darwin. This is Origin of the Species. I'll give you a bottle of wine or the flowers on the desk for anybody who can tell me the secondary title of it. No. The origin of the species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races. Favored races? You see, what he was saying here is they're not quite evolved enough. Send people back to Africa, let them bake a little longer in the oven, and then they'll catch up to us because we are a favored race. This starts the idea of eugenics. You have people like George Bernard Shaw. Oh, he's a celebrated playwright. He's the guy who said we should line people up every year and say, justify your existence. And if you can't, our society has no use for you. He's the first guy who says there's got to be some sort of a drug or a gas that we could put people in and kill them. That's George Bernard Shaw. This gives birth to Mein Kampf. This Mein Kampf is specially bound by Adolf Hitler, signed by Adolf Hitler to, if you watched Valkyrie or you know anything about Valkyrie, von Stauffenberg. This is his copy. This is a guy who hated Hitler and tried to kill him. But they waited too long because they were afraid. But we weren't. There was another torch. This torch was brought in at the Munich Olympics. This is the Olympic torch carried into the stadium from the Nazi Olympics. And who was there? Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens, who stood there and defied them. And who else? The guy who won silver. What was his name? I got to look it up here. What's his name? No. The last name was Long. I'm trying to remember his first name. Carl Long. Carl Long, he was supposed to win gold. He was a German, not a Nazi. He was a German. And he was watching Jesse Owens jump. And he said, Jesse, you're jumping too early. I'm going to go over and I'm going to put a towel down on the ground. Jump there. In front of Goebbels, in front of Hitler. Jump there. He did, he wins gold. Long wins silver. He and Jesse have this great friendship until he's sent to the Russian front and dies. But here we have another American who knows what's right and stands for it. This is a Honus Wagner card. Extraordinarily rare. I don't know anything about baseball. I don't really care. I care about this side. The reason why this is such a rare card is because there are very few of them. Why? Because he was a guy who believed in setting a good example. He was a guy who said, I want kids to look up to me, and I want them to be able to follow my example, and I don't smoke. I don't chew tobacco. I think it's wrong. And you printed my card with a tobacco company on the back. No. That was not a popular decision and cost him a lot of money. But we look at the Honus Wagner card and we don't talk about the other side. This is an American who says, no, it's not about fame, it's not about fortune, no, it's about something bigger. It's about setting an example and doing the tough things. I'm going to skip some stuff. I want to do this one piece. World War II. Who are we? Oh, we are horrible. World War II. We dropped the atomic bomb. Oh, we are so heartless. I don't want to even get into the stats of how many would have died if we didn't. But why isn't this shown in every classroom in America? And I have about 100 of them, all different. Shows American planes dropping bombs. On the back, in Japanese, it says, we have a weapon more powerful than all of the bombs that we have dropped over Europe the entire war in one bomb. And we're coming. And we're coming to one of these 10 cities. And it's happening soon. Get your family out. We are not interested in hurting you. We want an end to the war. Get your family out and bring food, bring water. Because if you live near one of these cities, they will be very scarce. We are horrible monsters. Why don't you know that we dropped 70 million of these? Who are we? This is one of my favorites. Disneyland. This is from The Lost Weekend. No one would give Walt Disney any money. This amusement park, no, it's a theme park. What? What's that? It's not an amusement park. It's not, it's a theme park, and our theme is America. When you read what he planned, the Disneyland story, Disneyland will be based upon and dedicated to the ideals, the dreams, and the hard facts that created America. It will be uniquely equipped to dramatize these dreams and facts and send them forth as a source of courage and inspiration to all the world. Boy, it ain't that now. This is the first drawing of Disneyland. Hand-colored by Walt. This is who we are. We are now building cities all around the world that he first designed in the 1960s with Epcot. Epcot was not an amusement park. He saw over the horizon and saw what we were doing and said, there's got to be a better way. We are dreamers. We are people that say, yeah, we can do that. Now, here's where things have changed. Because of our government, do you know that he couldn't get a bank to go with him? This was saved because the last bank he went to that day, the guy said, can I keep this? He said, yes, please. He brought it home and said, guys, kids, Walt Disney came to my office today and asked me for a loan. Look at this. Look at the picture. Look what he wants to do. Dad, that's so great. Did you give him the money? No, that's crazy. And put it up on the shelf. It was found a few years ago. In 1955, it opened in July. But he announced it in September 1954. He broke ground, brought everything in, and had all of it going in less than a year. You couldn't get the environmental study done. But at the same time, he changed the world, not just in entertainment. He was a dreamer and visionary. He had seen what was going on with the space race. So it's 1955. He opens the park in July of 1955. But a week later, he does The Wonderful World of Disney, and he does a documentary called Man in Space. Man in Space, he had the guy who drew all of the Seven Dwarfs. Hey, Ward, come here just a sec. I want you to meet, this Nazi doctor, von Braun, who, created the rockets that destroyed London. Don't worry about it. I think he's pretty okay. I want you to listen to him, and then I want you to put together a documentary on how we could go to space. This airs once, number 1. It's the first rerun. They run it again 3 months later. Eisenhower calls up and says, Walt, you son of a bitch, you did it. He said, I've been trying to convince the guys at the Pentagon that we could go to space. I was going the wrong direction. You just convinced the American people. It is because of Walt Disney that we went to the moon. Most people don't know that. This is the actual lunar map that Apollo 11 used to go to the moon. They were way off target. And they didn't know, are we landing in marshmallow fluff? Is this going to be a hard landing? What is happening? We didn't know. We weren't afraid. We were Americans. And this wasn't an American event. Yes, we did it, but the world felt it was a win for humanity. Man's greatest achievement, because there was a place just past that golden door that you could dream and do. We live in a time now of tremendous possibilities. The world will not be the same in 10 years. You will not recognize our lives in 10 years. With AI, with just 5G, when 5G hits, 5G is the reason why you don't have a car that can drive. Because it has too much latency. It's the reason why a man cannot do surgery, a great surgeon cannot do surgery from Chicago on a patient in China, because there's too much latency, there's too much lag time. 5G gives that surgeon the opportunity to work his hands here in Chicago inside the body of someone in Hong Kong, and it's happening at the same time. 5G will be able to not only know where you're going, but it will know every other car around you. It will know who's in that car. It will have to start weighing, if I'm going to get into an accident, which one do I hit? Don't laugh. That is being studied right now at MIT. And it is terrifying. Who lives, who dies? You will not recognize the world. And it is either going to be a nightmare or it's going to be the greatest ever. Freedom, the only thing I could say is for the first time, our founders could not have seen this. Freedom beyond your wildest expectations. But it is up to each of us right now. I want to close with this. This is a handwritten letter from Thomas Jefferson. His penmanship is unbelievable. He's writing to Caesar Rodney. He's the guy from Delaware on the back of the quarter. He says, Caesar, I see still a breaker ahead which fills me with horror. But I hope that prudence and moderation and a regard for our own happiness, and especially for the cause of reformation throughout the world, will influence and induce a spirit of accommodation and save our country and the world entire from the calamity threatened. We indeed are the world's last hope, and its loss will be on our heads forever. This was not the breaker he saw, but I see a breaker ahead. And the world, if we can be for things, not just against them, we must teach people what socialism is. But at the same time, we must take our history and let it inspire the world. Be that beacon of light again that everyone looks at and says, look what these people are doing. But it's going to require all of us being prudent, all of us being our best selves. As General Anthony Wayne said in a letter to George Washington, one of the critical battles in the Revolution, it's one they didn't expect to win it. He sends a letter at 2 o'clock in the morning. Wayne is shot in the head. He's got a bandage on his head, and he's like, you got to get me a piece of paper and pencil. And he's like, dude, you got a bullet in your head. He's like, I know. Believe me, I know. I have to write the general. All he writes, 2 a.m. Dear General, the fort and the garrison are ours. Your men fought like men determined to be free. I am determined, not for my freedom. I am determined that my children will be free. I am determined that not on my watch will liberty and freedom slip away in the darkness because we were too arrogant, too angry, too uninterested, or too afraid. We must all begin tonight to behave like men and women determined to be free. Thank you.